In a recent interview with Daryo, the UK ambassador to Uzbekistan, Timothy Smart, discussed the opportunities arising from Uzbekistan's engagement with British financial markets. He highlighted the strengthening bilateral ties across various sectors, including trade, education, and environmental cooperation, as well as the expansion of cultural exchanges. Timothy Smart has served as a British ambassador to Uzbekistan since 2023. Prior to this role, he held various positions within the British diplomatic service, gaining experience in multiple countries. Ambassador Smart, how would you characterize the current state of Uzbekistan-Great Britain relations? What have been the most notable areas of progress in recent years for you?
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. So the relationship at the moment is growing. We have over 600 years of relations dating back to Amir Timur and Henry IV, but more recently over 30 years since Uzbekistan's independence. And that relationship has strengthened massively since 2016. And the President's Young Uzbekistan reform agenda has been something we have got behind fully to support, and that has opened up cooperation, partnerships, friendships across the board, whether it's on education, whether it's on trade, whether it's on capacity building, helping ways we can help with the strengthening of the country. But I think deep down, much of this is human-to-human contact. We were just speaking about the rich culture of Uzbekistan and my own interest in history and ancient history. And just being here and the warm welcome and the rich culture, the cities of Bukhara, Khiva, Samarkand, the Fergana Valley, these things are just beautiful for tourists to come and see. So there's a lot of cooperation happening already, and there's so much more that I'm in a privileged position to help facilitate and bring together in partnership with my Uzbek hosts. We have over 30 British companies, British universities, tertiary education who work in Uzbekistan already. And they're either through them or for franchise operations. That's huge. It's the largest in Central Asia. And that reflects the focus on English language, English education, access to job markets that the reform agenda has brought about. But it also goes back longer than that. It goes back to, I think, Westminster International University opening up over 20 years ago. And the benefit of that today is we see many thousands of Uzbeks who have studied in the UK, who are now leading entrepreneurs, leading in government, in ministry positions, as ministers, in cinematography, in culture, just a broad breadth of Uzbeks who've gone to UK and come back and now are sharing their experience and building those partnerships today. So that's a big part of where we can help, and it's really enjoyable to get behind with a big offer. And then we've been supporting more directly the government round with economic governance programs, where we work across Central Asia, but particularly the largest part in Uzbekistan, where we work with President's administration, with various lead ministries on how do we support the economic reform program. What can we do behind the economic policy behind to help move that forward? So we share expertise, we share capacity, and say, what do you want to deliver? How can we help you build that capacity to deliver around, say, SME reform, small medium enterprise reform, or WTO accession. Again, we bring partnership expertise to help with that where it's useful for Uzbek hosts. And more broadly, there's a whole load of areas where we support, but on the kind of economic side, that we also have a green inclusive growth fund, for example. It's about £18 million, and it's across the region, and it's designed, climate change affects us all. We're all concerned by the need to have cleaner energy and what happens with our environment as the planet's heating up. What does that mean for business, livelihoods, how we feed, water resources? So this is a small example of a project where we try and provide access to finance, private finance, to small companies, small medium companies in Uzbekistan to help them access money to help with green technologies, green projects, green energy provision. And I think it's just niche areas like this where we've listened to what the need is and hopefully we support. But there's tens of other programs as well which we're doing at the moment, either bilaterally, commercially, or through World Bank, through the UN, etc., where we support UNICEF, etc.
Which industries present the key opportunities for British investors, and how is the UK facilitating this engagement?
Thank you, Albina. So I mentioned education already, but beyond that, one of my biggest offers as the British ambassador here is We can help on governance programs, more than happy, really like doing that. The education program, we look at areas where we can support. But one of the biggest offers I have as part of the President's vision of a multi-vectoral partnership, which we support fully, both economic, diplomatic, is access to the capital markets in the UK, particularly but not exclusively in London. And that means, so if you need to do infrastructure reform, if you need more green finance, if you need to invest in schools, how do you get the money for that? Well, the capital markets in London give great access to that. So we make sure the state-owned banks are in contact with UK counterparts, so we help bring together those commercial relationships. So one area is around financial and business services. Another area where we do a lot of work and want to do a lot more is on infrastructure, again to support that reform agenda, not exclusively in mining, but also in energy and water. What can we do to support those areas? Transport networks, airports. Again, I spend a lot of time listening to my Uzbek hosts about what your needs are in those areas and how can we support. And I have here a DBT, Department for Business and Trade team, established in 2022, growing the whole time. And they are focused on building those links, both government to government. And we have a joint economic commission, the first one starting on 26th of March in the UK. And then we have various different business forward behind to support. And the other areas would be clean growth, green growth, and digital areas where we do support and lean in. But again, I think when I speak to Uzbek, I would say we'd like to do more on agriculture and support there. So again, we have a discussion as partnerships about what both sides need.
Thanks a lot. And the next question will be about the Brexit.
Yep.
Has it created new opportunities or challenges for Uzbek businesses looking to enter the UK market?
Yeah, thank you. So Brexit was a period of change for my own country and how we did business. But at its fundamental, one of the drivers of my Brexit was to allow us to trade more freely globally bilaterally with partners, and that's been a huge opportunity for our relationship with Uzbekistan and Central Asia more broadly. So I mentioned the increase in my Department for Business and Trade team on the embassy platform. That's part of it. So we bring expertise here to help facilitate business-to-business contacts, government-to-government contacts in business economic reform, where we bring together access to UK export finance, where we bring access to a whole range of different relationships, and particularly about market access to explain how Uzbek companies do business in the UK. And actually, the paperwork isn't much different than it was before, but we have our own system in place. We spend a lot of time making sure that business understand, and we want Uzbek investors and entrepreneurs coming to the UK, and likewise we want a British business coming here, and that is growing annually.
Oh, thanks a lot. So there are no challenges?
So one of the things, I think one of the challenges I always face both ways is just awareness of the systems in place. So we have online portals and platforms to support with that, and it's just what papers do you need to fill in to do it, the visa requirements, what are required. So we have teams here dedicated to supporting and helping with that. And I think one of the things just to flag that Uzbekistan was the first country in the region to get the Enhanced General Services program put in place, the GSP, which released tariffs on over 7,000 goods from Uzbekistan heading to the UK, something which wouldn't have been happening pre-Brexit. So again, tariff-free, real advantage to Uzbek businesses trading with the UK.
So what progress has been made in establishing the British Uzbek Chamber of Commerce, and what role do you envision in playing in enhancing bilateral business relations?
British Uzbek Chamber of Commerce. I was very pleased to see that the British Uzbek Society in the UK has a new chair, and my counterpart there, Ambassador Usmanov, is being active with, I think it's Viscount Waverley, in establishing a chair there. So that will help business-to-business contacts in the UK. I'm actively looking with my team here how we can support the private sector build its own Chamber of Commerce here, if that would work for them. There is Daryo.uz, of which there's British companies are involved, but maybe as a sub-chapter of that, we are actively in discussions and with businesses here and in the UK about whether this would be supportive. But fundamentally, it's to make sure those business-to-business contacts are happening, to make sure they can discuss challenges, market access, and also they can lobby and advocate, both myself, British government and Uzbek government, about some of the things they need. And so very supportive of that idea, we just got to get it up and running.
And the UK has pledged £4 billion in export financing for Uzbek projects. Which sectors stand to benefit the most, and how is it funding expected to shape economic cooperation?
so there's part of the bilateral situation is we've seen trade grow from about $200 million in 2019 to in 2023 to about $500 million. As that grew, and as we were sending advice back to London, we looked at the opportunities here. We've seen plus 5% growth since 2016, 6.5% last year. So with that comes huge opportunities. And one of the things we thought, well, how can we support the reform agenda, the particularly infrastructure development? And one of the best offers we have is UK Export Finance, which is this £4 billion loan guarantee. So what it does is it lowers the rate. So as the British government guarantees the loan, as long as there's at least 20% British content in a deal, then we will look to support. And that essentially means cheaper lending prices, lower basis points, and a sovereign guarantee on it. And within that, our target areas are not exclusive, but we're largely looking at around mining, infrastructure, transport. But again, there's other areas we can look at in those. We've had the first deal with Al Malik with Weir Mining. It's just about close to 13 million euros to help Al Malik develop its copper abilities and smelting abilities there. But that is just hopefully the tip of the iceberg. So we're in active discussions about other projects, Uzbek governmental priorities, business priorities here where we can bring that to support. We think it's quite an attractive offer, and I think it's world class in terms of its competitiveness against others offering similar credit facilities. We want to see more UK, as I mentioned earlier, this access to capital markets is really important to me in the London financial services. It's one of my biggest offers. There's billions of pounds access to capital markets through the UK. Now, it shouldn't just have to be the UK, there's other markets in the Gulf, elsewhere, which is natural for Uzbekistan to reach out to, but there's a very competitive and large offer from London and the UK. And within that, we want to see more. So it's great to see some of the initial IPOs, the planning, hopefully to the London Stock Exchange, some of the bond issuances been happening into the billions of dollars. We want to see more. And we want to also share at the same time the expertise that London brings in terms of supporting privatisation of state-owned enterprises and SMEs. So within that, if I can bring links together with the Bank of England and the Financial Conduct Authority, I know a few of my senior Uzbek counterparts in the government here want to activate those links to share what would be most useful for Uzbekistan in terms of capacity, research, regulatory frameworks. And again, we're actively involved in all these areas, not just the opportunity to do IPOs, bond issuances, but also regulatory frameworks to help Uzbekistan become as competitive as possible on the global markets and get that investment flowing in.
Also, I would like to ask the question about the IELTS exam. We know that last year the number of students who passed successfully the IELTS exam increased fivefold in 2024. What factors do you believe have contributed to this surge, and how does it reflect broader trends in educational cooperation between Uzbekistan and UK?
Sure, the educational cooperation is very strong. I think we might talk about it a little bit later, but essentially, as I was, the context to me here is there's both a commercial and a government-to-government and people-to-people side. The commercial side is we have a lot of English language experience and training. IELTS is probably the best brand internationally recognised in over 140 countries with tens of thousands of institutions who recognise them globally. So that's quite nice that we can lean in with British Council and others and support IELTS in country. But it's more than that. The growth of your economy, your diversification of your partnerships, the fact that most under 40s are learning English and they should learn Mandarin and Russian and other languages too. Clearly, choose what's best for your economy, but that diversified economy, the language of international business is English. The language of international education, English. So again, it just gives the greatest opportunities to your youth coming through to get the best skills they can to make sure they get the very best jobs, which will really bolster the development of your country. And that's great to be British ambassador here to support that. And we will look to do as much as we can. We have a few programs in that area where we are supporting. And there's three areas where it's focusing. It's improving teacher capacity. Yeah. It's very much also focused on helping government bodies with quality assurance processes in terms of teaching and examinations. And it's also looking to enable even more development of language training across the region. So it's quite a nice offer. It's three areas where we spoke to different governments, different institutions about what would be useful. There's lots of English language training, there's lots of teacher training going on. Where can the UK bring some of our expertise and capacity? So drawing on areas where we have strengths in the UK to help, strengthen your own education system. And I think that's quite. Hopefully that's quite an attractive offer. We certainly see this fund get a lot of interest from partners across, particularly in Uzbekistan, to take on board this project and to do more. We also are funding the British Council to undertake pre-service and in-service teacher training support. So more direct training to teachers just about to start, and about how they work and the capacity and the capabilities to help sure that they are out to the act. They're very good already, very talented, but to make sure they have the skills to be at their very best to international standards.
And the UK has been actively supporting Uzbekistan's transition to sustainable energy.
So the Energy and Water in Central Asia programme, this 19.5 million, it's designed to improve regional cooperation on water and energy. There's others doing this, so we're looking to work together, particularly in this case with the World Bank, to support their CAWEP, their Central Asia Water and Energy programme, to make sure that energy and water is shared equally across the region, that infrastructure is improved, greening it, making sure it's less carbon dependent, and that connectivity in the region is working well. So again, the overall premise of this is how do we help the governments, the peoples of Central Asia, in this case, and particularly in Uzbekistan, build climate resilience in energy and water provision, and that's incredibly important, and that's what the programme is designed to do. But within that, it also focuses on innovation in the climate space. What new ideas, what are coming on board to help with resilience, to help with energy provision, and so very much with a view that then that leads to financing some of the sort of more catalytic programs. So within that, there's a second part where we look at, as the governments in the region need to negotiate financing for some of these larger and medium-sized climate resilient projects, infrastructure, digitalisation programs, to make sure there's also an offer to support them in negotiating with private companies and indeed other governments on getting the best contracts. Some of these things are huge programs, and if you get the financing wrong, governments can lose billions over a 30-year program. So making sure that working with partners like GIZ, we put them in context with Connex, so make sure that government ministries here have the very best negotiating skills and capacity to make sure every sum is value for money for the taxpayers here and the government. And that, I think, is quite I hope is quite useful. Certainly a lot of the ministries here are very interested, and we've got a whole programme next week working with Connex and the various lead government ministries here on what does this mean, how can Connex support. Uzbekistan is the first country in Central Asia to take advantage of carbon trading. And what this actually means is that as you reform the tariff structures here, you reform, so you're greening, you're making your energy use from carbon footprint more effective. You get credit for that, which you can then use to continue to green your economy. And what this means, what this is in the UK, there is a specific programme, the Transformative Carbon Asset Facility, a bit technical, of which the UK provides a third of just under $50 million, about $46 million. And by supporting these type of initiatives, our idea is that the plan is to help Uzbekistan transition towards a low carbon, energy secure future, while ensuring that the reforms themselves, so as you lower tariffs, this I support, so that you get a truer price of energy, that at the same time the most vulnerable in society who are used to a model of heavily supportive energy, that it doesn't disrupt them and cause them harm, that actually they are supported through this process, so they have the resourcing and the ability to pay for energy, so they're not left behind. And that's very much part of this carbon trade of the ICRAF, to make sure that in that, that the poorer elements, the more of Uzbek society and Central Asian society, don't suffer as a result. And so we work with governments on that. So hopefully that's quite helpful. So because that's it's just fairer, and it helps more political stability.
How can British companies contribute to the country's renewable energy projects and emission reduction strategies?
So British companies hope it's fair to say, not known to be, I hope you probably agree, that are leaders in renewable energy, green finance, sustainable infrastructure, and some of the emissions reduction technology. So we look to bring that to us, but share those experience, bring those partnerships, both government to government, people to people. And one of the biggest office I mentioned already is making sure that Uzbekistan government and businesses have access to sustainable, green, clean energy financing. So, for example, we saw in 2023, I think it was, Uzbekistan issue a first Euro bond, green Euro bond. Essentially, so you can use the bond to finance greening infrastructure projects, digitalization in Uzbekistan. And that was a new bond, but there's plenty more happening and coming. That was about £250 million. Sounds massive in sum. I think it was 4.25 trillion sum, but in pounds. But that's good, and we can do more of that. And again, just making sure that as you transition to a greener, more sustainable economy, that the money is competitive for you, and you have access to both government, particularly the private sector. And you can see with the Connex capacity, we're talking about negotiating that as you do these things, you also are getting the very best deal for your taxpayers here.
The UK has been a strong advocate for Uzbekistan's WTO accession, and what are the primary challenges in this process, and how is the UK assisting in overcoming them?
We're really impressed by, even in the 18 months since I've been here, how the capacity of the negotiating team has really improved. And when I speak to colleagues international and in London, really impressed by the quality of the negotiating team and the professionalism and its capacity. And the President has this ambitious agenda of 2026 to get it done. We want to support that as much as possible. We see WTO accession as really important as to integrate the Uzbek economy into the global financial and markets. So it's fundamental to that, fully supportive. We have some capacity building programs through the programs I mentioned earlier, through the governance programs we're supporting for economic governance programs. But more generally, our negotiators are talking to yours to work through how we sign a bilateral agreement. But in general, it's very positive. We're supporting behind the scenes from capacity building programs as requested. And there's a political willingness to do this because we know how important it is to make sure that Uzbekistan is fully integrated into the global economy, and I think that's really important, and it will help provide the jobs and growth and continued growth of your economy, and that's quite exciting.
So, as you mark 2 years leading the UK diplomatic mission in Uzbekistan, what are the impressions of the country, and how do you view recent developments, including air quality challenges in urban areas like Tashkent?
So, the country, I love the warmth, and the Hush Calypsos here continues. It's genuine, it's wonderful to see. The sense of entrepreneurship is impressive and growing from very state-run economy in 2016, to lots of business people going out and thinking of building this thing, and the government very supportive of that. Yes, of course there's challenges between, the pace of reform, but generally the direction of travel is really impressive. And choose a sector, business or non-business, where it was in 2016 or 4 years ago to where it is now in terms of Britain and Uzbek relations, whether it's on education, whether it's trade, whether it's around security, counter-terrorism work, whether it's around education. Everything is blooming and flowering and going in a really positive direction. More British tourists are coming here. We want to get more flights here. We want to see more Uzbeks going to the UK, getting more degrees. But tens of thousands of Uzbeks have already got UK degrees, whether in country here in transnational education or in the UK. So that is brilliant, and it's an absolute honour to help drive that, support and facilitate and bring it. And the President's reform agenda is something we all get behind. Rapidly, from where you were in 2016 to where you are now is amazing change. But if you just take an indice of, say, poverty, it was over 30% in 2016. It's under 10 now, I think probably around 7 if I remember. I know that's not enough. The President wants it to be down to under 5% by 2030. That's something everyone can rally around as well. That's a really good news story. There's other areas where we can work and support. Air quality, an area where we would happily help and support. If we look at something like where will air quality be in 5-10 years' time, a lot of the programs we talked about just now about cleaner energy is something we're trying to do to support. We're not alone, others are doing. When I got here in August 23, I think I probably saw 1 or 2 BYD cars on the streets. Now I see all these electric cars everywhere. The more that can be encouraged, the more that electric cars can be produced domestically and come in from overseas, and local population can afford them. That will drive clean air in your cities. That would be really positive. And you're doing it now. The green buses you've got, electric buses you've got, will all help. You've still got some heavy coal-fired power stations near some of your big cities. And if you can transition away from those, again, the population will notice it. It will be a good news story, and all of us will breathe better because you've got an amazing climate. And just lastly, when we look at Uzbekistan, sometimes we internationally, I was in Madagascar before, where 10% of the world's biodiversity comes from. So I am quite passionate about seeing whether there's something we can do to work to support your nature and biodiversity so it works in harmony with your population. And, on a reflection, looking at cotton, the difference in the level of how much cotton was a GDP. It's still a really important part of your economy, and it's really great to see all the investment in producing clothing in country, etc. But it's a monoculture. Is there ways to look at different monocultures around the world and look at ways to make them more diverse? So, a small example, if you can plant other crops with cotton, you can plant trees, you should get greater yields over time. The farmers should get more, you should get other crops, and you should get greater soil and greater water retention. So that could be a real win. And there's examples not in cotton, but in things like cocoa production in Africa, in Chad and other countries, where UK companies, UK government is supporting more biodynamic agriculture. So again, that's something which I haven't seen a lot of here, but there's are options to support and look for those links. Be really interested, because cotton's such a big part of the GDP here, but at the same time it's also quite a drain on your water and the soil erosion issues and communities. So there's answers where we can work together, but it's not alone. There's Uzbeks working on these issues based here, and a place like Cavendish laboratory in Cambridge. I remember coming out seeing one of your leading academics, Timur, there, who was exactly working on how to make agricultural produce here more sustainable if higher temperatures due to climate change. So Uzbeks are helping lead one of the top British research institutes into this area, which will not only help Britain, the world on adjusting to climate change, but also particularly Uzbekistan. So it's exciting. Genuinely, if I said anything which would interest you, reach out to the embassy, see how we can support. My counterpart, Ambassador Usmanov in the UK, is really active in this sphere. We are two sides of the same coin, as you like, the bilateral sides. He's passionate about enhancing Uzbek-British relationships, so am I. Let's see what we can do together. And I'm not claiming that Britain is the answer to all the things yet. Far from it. We are hopefully an important and strong partner, one where we help build the multilateralism of the President's reform agenda. Very keen to do that. We know there's challenges. Each of our countries have challenges, but we work together as friends and partners, and that relationship is building each year, and that is not just government to government, it's business to business, and it's people to people. And wherever I can help with that, I'm genuinely interested. Just get in contact.